Let me tell you something that the organic produce section at your grocery store is counting on you to never figure out. Right now, today, the average American family is spending somewhere between $400 and $600 a year on fresh fruit, not processed food, not fancy steaks, just fruit. Apples, peaches, cherries, lemons, pears. The kind of food that used to grow in every backyard in this country before we somehow got convinced that growing your own food was complicated or that you needed an acre of land to do it. Your grocery bill went up again last month. And the month before that, organic fruit prices have climbed nearly 30% in the last 3 years alone. I want you to sit with that number for a second. 30%. And what did you get for that increase? The same tasteless peach in a plastic clamshell that was picked green in Chile and ripened in a gas chamber before it hit the shelf. Here is what the grocery store and the big box garden center both need you to believe: that fruit trees are complicated, that they need enormous space, that they are for serious orchardists with a half acre and a tractor. That is not gardening advice. That is a business model designed to keep you dependent. Because I am here today to show you 9 fruit trees that will grow beautifully in a container on your patio, your balcony, your driveway, or the corner of a small backyard, and they will start putting money back in your pocket within the first season. And I want to warn you right now, stick around for number 6 on this list, because that one alone is going to completely change the way you think about what is possible in a 20-gallon pot. Drop your U.S. state or your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now, because every single recommendation I make today is zone-specific, and I want to make sure you are growing what actually works where you live. Number 1, Columnar apples. Let us start with something that genuinely looks like it should not exist. Columnar apples. If you have never seen one in person, I want you to picture a standard apple tree, and then I want you to take away every single lateral branch. What you are left with is a single vertical pillar of fruiting wood, anywhere from 8 to 10 feet tall, but only 2 to 3 feet wide. That is it. That is the whole tree. And before you ask whether something that skinny can actually produce real fruit, let me give you the math. A single mature Columnar apple tree can produce up to 50 pounds of full-sized, full-flavored apples in a single season. Now go to your grocery store this week and price out organic apples. You are looking at between $2 and $4 a pound, depending on your region and the variety. 50 pounds of organic apples at $2.50 a pound is $125 from one tree. That is roughly 18 inches wide at the base, growing in a 15 to 20-gallon container on your back patio. The 2 varieties you want to know by name are North Pole and Scarlet Sentinel. North Pole is your classic red dessert apple, dense and crisp, and it performs reliably across USDA zones 4 through 8. Scarlet Sentinel is a yellow-green apple with a slightly more complex flavor profile, better for fresh eating and light cooking, and it covers the same zone range. Now here is something critically important that nobody at your garden center ever tells you when they sell you one of these trees. Columnar apples are self-unfruitful. That means you cannot plant just one and expect a harvest. You must have 2 genetically distinct varieties within about 20 feet of each other for cross-pollination to occur. So plant North Pole and Scarlet Sentinel together. 2 containers, 2 trees, and now you are looking at the potential for 100 pounds of apples a season. Do that math slowly. At $2.50 a pound, you just grew $250 worth of organic apples on a surface area smaller than a queen-sized mattress. Columnar apples ask very little from you. They want full sun, at least 6 hours a day, they want well-draining potting mix in that 15-gallon container, and they want you to stop overwatering them. Deep watering once or twice a week during the growing season. Depending on heat, they are naturally compact and require very minimal pruning because the architecture of the tree does the work for you. If a side shoot appears, you remove it cleanly at the base in late winter. That is genuinely the most complicated thing you will ever do with this tree. Number 2, improved Meyer lemon. I want to be straight with you about something. There are 2 types of Meyer lemons being sold right now in America. There is the original Meyer lemon, and there is the improved Meyer lemon. They look almost identical in the pot at the garden center. The difference matters enormously, and I can almost guarantee that nobody told you about it when you bought yours. The original Meyer lemon was found to be a carrier of a citrus virus called tristeza. The improved Meyer lemon, formally released after decades of pathogen-free certification, is what you want. When you are shopping, look specifically for the tag that says Improved Meyer Lemon, or ask the nursery for virus-indexed stock. Do not settle for anything else. Now, why is the Meyer lemon the gold standard for container citrus? Because it is not a true lemon, it is a cross between a lemon and a mandarin orange, and that hybrid heritage gives it two enormous advantages over a standard Eureka or Lisbon lemon. First, the flavor. The fruit is sweeter, less acidic, with a thin, edible skin and a rich citrus aroma that a grocery store lemon simply cannot replicate. Second, the tree is dramatically more cold tolerant and more adaptable to the lower light conditions of an indoor winter. A standard lemon tree moved inside for the winter in Minnesota is going to struggle. An improved Meyer lemon is going to survive that transition and keep producing. Here is the financial reality. A mature, improved Meyer lemon in a 15-gallon container, and I am talking about a well-fed, properly managed tree in its third or fourth year, will yield between 25 and 50 lemons year-round. Not just in one seasonal flush, like an outdoor citrus, but continuously through the year, including winter. Now, organic Meyer lemons at a farmer's market or a specialty grocery store range from $1 to $2 per fruit. At 30 lemons a year, at $1.50 each, that is $45. That does not sound impressive until you realize the tree does this every single year for 10 to 15 years, and that the Meyer lemon is genuinely one of the most useful ingredients in cooking, baking, cocktails, and preserving. For container success with Meyer lemon, you need full sun, ideally a south-facing window indoors in winter. Use a citrus-specific potting mix or a fast-draining mix amended with perlite. Feed it with a slow-release citrus fertilizer in spring and midsummer. And here is the most common mistake I see. People let their potted citrus sit in a saucer of standing water and then cannot figure out why the leaves are yellowing. Root rot from poor drainage kills more container citrus than anything else. Elevate your pot. Let it drain completely. This tree thrives in zones 9 through 11 outdoors year-round, but in zones 4 through 8, it becomes a portable indoor-outdoor tree, summering outside and wintering in front of your brightest window. Number 3. Little Miss Figgy. Dwarf fig. Stop what you are doing and listen carefully, because this next tree is one of the most underrated container plants in American horticulture. And the reason it is underrated is almost entirely because nurseries do not stock it aggressively enough. The profit margin on figs is lower than on roses and azaleas, so your garden center would rather sell you a flat of annuals you will replace every single spring. I want to put that on the record. The fig we are talking about today is Little Miss Figgy, a dwarf mutation of the legendary Violet de Bordeaux's fig that was specifically selected for compact container growth. While a standard fig tree can reach 15 to 20 feet and will eventually crack the walls of any container you put it in, Little Miss Figgy naturally stays under 4 feet tall. It is a genetic trait, not a pruning trick. You cannot achieve this compactness by cutting a standard fig down. This tree is born small and stays small, and that distinction matters enormously for long-term container viability. The fruit quality is exceptional. Dark purple-black skin, a deep ruby interior that tastes like concentrated strawberry jam with notes of honey. Fresh figs at a farmer's market or specialty grocery store range from $4 to $8 per half pint. A mature, well-managed potted Little Miss Figgy can produce 2 crops per season in zones 7 through 10, a smaller breba crop in early summer on previous year's wood, and a main crop in late summer on new growth. Over the course of a full season, that is a meaningful harvest. I have seen well-tended container figs in Georgia and California produce enough fruit for fresh eating and preserving simultaneously. Here is the care tip that almost nobody talks about, and getting this wrong is why potted figs plateau and stop producing. Figs actually benefit from root restriction up to a point, but eventually the root mass fills the container entirely. The tree hits what growers call a vigor wall, and production drops off. To prevent this, you need to practice biennial root pruning. Every other year, during late winter dormancy, when the tree has no leaves and no active growth, you remove the tree from its container, and you use a sharp saw or pruning shears to slice away approximately 30% of the outer root mass. Then you repot into fresh mix. It sounds brutal. The tree does not care. It pushes right back out and fruits harder the following summer. If you skip this step, you will watch your once productive figs slowly decline, and you will never understand why. Now you know. Zones 5 through 11 can grow this tree. In zones 5 and 6, move the dormant container into an unheated garage once temperatures drop below 20 degrees. The tree needs cold dormancy, but the root ball must not freeze solid. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. How much money have you spent at the garden center in the last 3 springs replacing things that died? I am not asking rhetorically. I am asking you to actually add it up in your head right now. The annuals that did not come back, the tomato plants that got blight, the shrub that looked spectacular in the pot at the store and then sat there and sulked for 2 years before you quietly dug it out. For most American homeowners over 50, that number is somewhere between $200 and $500 a year. Every year. And the garden center is not losing any sleep over it because they know you will be back in April. That is their entire business model. My channel exists to break that cycle. Everything we cover here is built around real plants, real results, real zones, and real dollar savings, not photographs of beautiful gardens that cost $10,000 to install. If you have not subscribed yet, I want you to hit that button right now. It is free. It takes 2 seconds. And it means that every time we put out content like this, YouTube actually puts it in your feed instead of burying it. That subscription button is literally the smartest free decision you can make today to stop the cycle of wasting money every spring. Hit it now and let us keep going. Number 4. Nana Dwarf pomegranate. Nobody told you this, and I genuinely mean that, so pay attention. Pomegranates are one of the most expensive fruits in America right now. A single organic pomegranate at a grocery store runs between $3 and $6. A small bag of fresh arils, the jewel-like seeds inside, runs $4 to $7 for a handful. And the reason pomegranates are expensive is because they are genuinely difficult to grow at commercial scale in most of the United States. The trees need heat, they need low humidity, and they need a long growing season. Most of the commercial pomegranate production in America happens in California's San Joaquin Valley. And by the time that fruit reaches a Kroger in Ohio or a Publix in Virginia, you are paying for every mile of that journey. But here is what changes everything for the container gardener. The cultivar Nana, botanical name Punica granatum nana, is a true genetic dwarf that rarely exceeds 3 feet in height. 3 feet. It fits on a patio table. It fits on a small balcony. It fits in a 12 to 15-gallon container with room to spare. And it produces 2-inch fruits packed with antioxidant-rich arils that are entirely edible and genuinely delicious. Let me give you the financial picture for this one. A single well-managed Nana pomegranate in a small container, receiving full sun and appropriate heat, can produce enough fruit to represent approximately $100 worth of organic pomegranate product at retail prices. With very low input costs, this tree is drought tolerant, it does not need rich soil, and it does not need aggressive fertilization. In fact, overfeeding a Nana pomegranate pushes it toward ornamental leaf growth at the expense of fruiting. Lean soil and moderate neglect is genuinely the correct growing technique here. The cold hardiness of this tree will surprise you. Nana is reliably cold hardy down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which puts it solidly in Zone 7 hardiness, and some growers report survival in protected Zone 6 microclimates. For Zones 9 through 11, it is an outdoor, year-round plant. For Zones 6 through 8, it is a container plant that winters in an unheated garage or shed without issue. It goes completely deciduous in cold weather, drops its leaves, and looks dead. It is not dead. leave it alone, stop watering it, and it will push new growth in spring like nothing happened. For a south-facing balcony in the American Southeast, Southwest, or anywhere with genuine summer heat, this is possibly the single most cost-effective container fruit tree on this entire list. Do that math. A $12 tree producing $100 of fruit annually for 15 years. That is not gardening. That is arithmetic. Number 5. Pixie-cot dwarf apricot. I want to talk about something that frustrates me, and it has to do with how the American nursery industry sells apricot trees. Walk into any major garden center in spring, and you will find apricot trees in 1-gallon and 5-gallon pots, often labeled simply as dwarf apricot without specifying the rootstock or the cultivar. That distinction is not trivial. It is everything. A tree grafted onto a semi-dwarfing rootstock and planted in the ground will eventually grow to 15 or 20 feet. That is not a container tree. That is a tree that will destroy your container in 3 years and never fruit properly because it spent all its energy fighting its own confinement. The cultivar you want is Pixie-cot. This is a genetically dwarfing apricot. The dwarfism is in the scion wood itself, not just the rootstock, and it grows to a manageable 8 to 10 feet in the ground while being thoroughly containable in a 20-gallon pot at a maintained height of 5 to 6 feet with annual pruning. It is self-fertile, which means you do not need a second tree to get fruit, and the production numbers are impressive. A mature, well-established Pixie-cot can produce over 30 pounds of high-sugar, bright orange apricots in a single season. Now, let me give you the grocery store comparison because I want you to understand what 30 pounds of organic apricots actually costs a regular American family. Organic apricots at peak season run between $4 and $9 per pound at farmers markets and specialty grocers. At the lower end of production, 30 pounds at $4 a pound is $120 of fruit. At a higher yield and market price, you are looking at $270 from one tree. In one season, that tree costs you $30 to $50 at a reputable nursery. There is a care advantage here that goes beyond flavor and cost, and I want you to understand it because it is unique to container growing. Apricots are devastatingly susceptible to bacterial canker and brown rot fungus, and these diseases are almost always triggered by wet spring foliage. When your apricot is in the ground, you cannot move it out of the rain. You are at the mercy of your climate. When your apricot is in a container, you can roll it under a porch overhang, under a covered patio, or into a garage doorway during a rainy April week and completely sidestep the conditions that destroy an apricot crop. That mobility is a genuine and underappreciated advantage of container orcharding. Pixie-cot performs best in zones 5 through 9. It needs winter cold to set fruit a standard chill. Our requirement of around 400 hours below 45 degrees. So do not attempt this in South Florida or coastal Southern California without researching low-chill apricot varieties instead. Number 6. Genetic dwarf peaches, Bonanza and True Gold. This is the one I told you to wait for, and I want to start by telling you something that a lot of gardeners over 50 are going to find deeply validating. Every spring, millions of Americans spend money on peaches at the grocery store or the farmer's market that are picked hard, shipped green, and arrive in your kitchen mealy, flavorless, and disappointing every single year. You keep buying them because you remember what a real peach tastes like. A sun-warmed peach, picked at peak ripeness, bitten into over a kitchen sink because the juice is going to run down your arm. You cannot buy that peach. You have to grow it. Genetic dwarf peaches make that possible in a space the size of a dining room chair. These are not standard peach trees on dwarfing rootstocks. These are trees with genetically shortened internodes. The spacing between buds on each branch is naturally compressed, giving the tree a dense, shrubby canopy that tops out at 4 to 6 feet tall. In a 15 to 20-gallon container, a genetic dwarf peach looks more like a large flowering shrub than a fruit tree, and then it produces full-sized peaches. The two varieties you want to know. Bonanza is the most widely available genetic dwarf peach in American nurseries, producing medium-sized, Freestone yellow-fleshed peaches in mid to late summer. It is reliable in zones 5 through 9. True Gold is a higher quality selection with superior flavor and a firm flesh that holds up well to both fresh eating and preserving. If you can find True Gold at a specialty nursery, it is worth the search. Production numbers for genetic dwarf peaches are nothing short of remarkable for the container size. A healthy tree between years 3 and 7, which is the productive peak for these trees in containers, can yield between 1 and 3 bushels of fruit per season. 1 bushel of peaches weighs about 50 pounds. So we are talking about a realistic yield range of 50 to 150 pounds of full-sized organic peaches from a container on your patio. Organic peaches at a farmer's market or specialty grocer average between $3 and $4 per pound. Do that math slowly. At the conservative end, 50 pounds at $3, you are looking at $150. At the high end, 150 pounds at $4, you are approaching $600 of fruit from one container. Now, I want to be completely honest with you, because that is what this channel is about. Genetic dwarf peaches have a shorter productive lifespan in containers than some other trees on this list. They peak between years 3 and 7, and after year 7 in a pot, production typically declines meaningfully. This is not a deal breaker. It means you are managing a 7-year investment that pays for itself many times over in that window. Plan to replace the tree after year 7 rather than fighting a declining plant. The most important care instruction for genetic dwarf peaches is fruit thinning, and if you skip this step, you will regret it immediately. These trees set more fruit than their small frame can support. When the developing peaches are roughly the size of a dime, you must thin 50 to 70% of them, removing the majority of the young fruit, so the remaining peaches have adequate spacing and the branches are not overloaded. I know it hurts to remove fruit. Do it anyway. The peaches that remain will grow larger, sweeter, and more flavorful than if you had left everything on the tree, and you will prevent branch breakage that can permanently damage the structure of a small tree. Number 7. Dwarf nectarines, Maricrest and Fantasia. Let me tell you something about nectarines that most gardeners do not understand until they grow one. A nectarine is not a different species from a peach. It is a peach with a single recessive genetic mutation that eliminates the fuzz from the skin. That is the only biological difference. The cultivation requirements, the rootstock options, the flavor profile, the heat and chill requirements essentially identical. So everything I told you about genetic dwarf peaches applies directly here. But there are 2 reasons why dwarf nectarines deserve their own entry on this list, and both of them are important. The first reason is price. Organic nectarines are consistently more expensive than organic peaches at the retail level. A pound of organic nectarines at a quality grocery store or farmer's market ranges from $3 to $5 per pound. A mature dwarf nectarine in a container can produce a harvest in the range of 40 pounds in a productive season. At $4 a pound, you are looking at $160 of fruit per season from one 20-gallon container. The 2 varieties worth knowing by name are Maricrest and Fantasia, and they serve different geographic purposes. Maricrest is exceptional for cold climate container growers. It carries outstanding cold hardiness, reliably surviving temperatures down to -10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit at the dormant bud stage, which is genuinely remarkable for a stone fruit. If you are in Zone 5 Minnesota, Wisconsin, upstate New York, northern New England, and you have been told you cannot grow stone fruit, Maricrest is your answer. Fantasia, on the other hand, is the choice for gardeners who prioritize fruit size and visual impact. Fantasia produces exceptionally large nectarines with a beautiful red over yellow skin and excellent fresh eating quality, but it is more cold sensitive and belongs in zones 6 through 9. The second reason dwarf nectarines deserve separate attention is pest management. Nectarines, like peaches, are prime targets for the plum curculio, a weevil that lays eggs in developing fruit and whose larvae cause the characteristic curved scar and internal damage that ruins a stone fruit crop. When your tree is in the ground, managing plum curculio means either a spray program or accepting significant crop losses. When your tree is in a container, you can physically move it, Monitor it closely from all angles, and use exclusion netting or kaolin clay barriers far more effectively than you ever could with a tree planted in the ground. Container growing is not just about space. It is a pest management advantage that almost nobody talks about. Number 8. Garden Pearl Dwarf Pear. I want to talk about the pear for a moment, because pears have a reputation problem in American home gardening that is almost entirely the fault of the nursery industry, and it is time to correct the record. Standard pear trees, the Bartlett, the Bosque, the d'Anjou, are enormous. Left to their own devices, they reach 30 to 40 feet and spread nearly as wide. They take 10 to 15 years to reach peak production. They require a second pollinizer variety. And the European pear, unlike most other temperate fruit trees, must be harvested before it is ripe and ripened off the tree at controlled temperatures, or it turns mealy from the inside out. That is a complicated tree, and for the American homeowner with a patio and a 20-gallon pot, it has historically been a non-starter. Garden Pearl changes everything. This is a horticultural breakthrough developed in France and represents one of the most exciting advances in residential container fruit growing in the last 2 decades. Garden Pearl is a true genetic dwarf pear, not a standard pear on a dwarfing rootstock, but a tree whose genetics naturally limit it to a maximum height and spread of 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide. You are not fighting the tree's desire to be large. The tree simply is not large. It lacks the aggressive upright growth habit of standard pears entirely. It is self-fertile. You need only one tree to get fruit. That alone removes a major barrier for the container gardener who does not have space for multiple trees. The fruit is a beautiful, sweet, aromatic green pear with red streaking, and the flavor is exceptional. Genuinely comparable to premium market pears you would pay $2 to $4 per fruit for at a specialty grocer. There is one care detail with container pears that I want you to understand completely, because missing it can cost you the tree. Many dwarf pear rootstocks, including the quince rootstocks commonly used in Europe and increasingly in American nurseries, are less cold-hardy at the root level than the scion variety growing above the graft union. A tree grafted onto quince A or quince C rootstock may be sold to you as zone 5 or zone 6 hardy, and the top of the tree will survive those temperatures in the ground, where the soil provides root insulation. But that same tree with its root ball exposed in a container at 15 degrees can have the root system killed even though the branches look fine. When a hard freeze is forecast, move your containerized pears into an unheated garage, barn, or enclosed porch. Not a heated space, the tree needs cold dormancy, just protection from the most extreme temperature drops. This single step can mean the difference between a productive tree and a dead investment. Garden Pearl is available from specialty mail-order nurseries, including several operating out of the Pacific Northwest and the Mid-Atlantic region. If your local garden center does not carry it, it is worth ordering online. This tree is genuinely worth seeking out. Before we get to the last tree on this list, I want to stop and give you something genuinely valuable that most gardening content either glosses over or ignores entirely. Because knowing which trees to grow is only half the equation. The other half is understanding how container orcharding actually works as a system, and there are 4 critical practices that will determine whether your container fruit trees thrive for a decade or quietly die in year 3. The first is potting mix, and this is where I see gardeners make expensive mistakes constantly. Do not use straight garden soil in a container, ever. Garden soil compacts, drains poorly, and creates the anaerobic conditions that cause root rot. You want a professional-grade potting mix, something like a high-quality commercial blend with added perlite, at a ratio of roughly 3 parts mix to 1 part perlite. For citrus and pomegranate specifically, a dedicated citrus mix will provide the slightly more acidic pH and the fast drainage these trees demand. Cheap potting soil from a big box store is false economy. You are making a multi-year investment in a living tree. Give it the right foundation. The second practice is container sizing strategy, and most people get this backwards. The instinct is to put a small tree in the biggest container you can find so it has room to grow. Resist that instinct. Oversized containers hold more moisture than the roots can process, and consistently wet soil means root rot. Start a young tree in a container that is 2 to 4 inches larger than its nursery pot. Move up one container size every 2 to 3 years as the root system fills out. A fruit tree that is slightly root-bound is a fruit tree that is encouraged to focus its energy on reproduction, meaning fruit, rather than vegetative expansion. The third practice is fertilization timing. Container fruit trees are entirely dependent on you for nutrients because, unlike a tree in the ground, the roots cannot go exploring for what they need. I recommend a balanced, slow-release fertilizer, a 10-10-10 or similar formulation applied in early spring when you see the first bud swell, and again in early summer. Stop fertilizing by late summer. Nitrogen applied in fall stimulates tender new growth that will be killed by the first frost, and it pushes the tree into winter in the wrong physiological state. Feed in spring and summer. Stop in fall. Let the tree harden off naturally. The fourth practice, and this is the one that separates experienced container orchardists from beginners, is winter root protection. The great vulnerability of a container fruit tree in zones 5 through 7 is not the air temperature. It is the soil temperature. A tree rated cold hardy to zone 5 can survive air temperatures of -10 degrees Fahrenheit when its roots are insulated by 3 feet of earth. But that same tree, with its root ball exposed in a plastic container on a concrete patio, can have its roots killed at 15 or 20 degrees. The solution is simple. Cluster your containers together against a south-facing wall or a house foundation. Wrap the pots in burlap or bubble wrap. Mulch the top of the container with several inches of straw, or, for the most reliable winter protection, roll the dormant containers into an unheated but frost-resistant space A. Garage, a shed, an enclosed porch from December through February. The trees are dormant. They need no light during that period. They just need their roots above a killing freeze. One more thing I want to address directly: watering in containers during hot weather. In the peak of summer, a container fruit tree in full sun may need water every single day. This is not a sign that something is wrong. It is physics. A small volume of growing medium in a black plastic pot on a south-facing concrete surface in July in Tennessee can reach soil temperatures that dry out completely in 12 hours. Buy a moisture meter. Use it. Water when the top 2 inches of soil are dry. Water deeply until it flows freely from the drainage hole. Then stop. Consistent moisture without waterlogging is the single most important environmental variable you control as a container orchardist. Number 9. Stella dwarf cherry on Gisela 5 or Colt rootstock. I have saved this one for last, deliberately, because cherries have a near mythological status in American home gardening. Everyone wants them. Almost nobody successfully grows them at home, and the reason for that failure rate is not the cherry itself. It is the rootstock, and it is the birds, and it is the scale of the tree. Let me address all three, because when you get these 3 things right, a container cherry tree on your patio is one of the most productive and satisfying plants you can grow. Sweet cherries in the ground, your standard Bing, your Rainier, your Lambert want to be 30 to 40 feet tall. They produce fruit in the upper canopy where you need a ladder and a cherry picker to harvest, while the birds eat everything they want from the accessible branches. They are stunning landscape trees and essentially useless for the home gardener trying to actually eat the fruit. This is the version of cherry growing that has frustrated American homeowners for generations. Here is how you change the entire equation. The cultivar, Stella, is a self-fertile sweet cherry, meaning it pollinates itself without a second variety nearby, which is extremely unusual in the cherry world where most sweet cherries require 2 compatible varieties to set fruit. When you graft Stella onto a genuinely dwarfing rootstock, specifically Gisela 5, or the slightly more vigorous Colt, you get a tree that can be maintained beautifully in a 20 to 25 gallon container at a height of approximately 6 feet. Not 30 feet, not 15 feet, 6 feet. A tree you can reach the top of while standing flat-footed on your patio. A well-managed Stella in a container, in its productive years, can yield between 15 and 20 quarts of sweet cherries per season. Organic sweet cherries are some of the most expensive fruit you can buy in America. A single dry pint of organic cherries at a farmer's market or upscale grocery store runs between $5 and $10. 15 to 20 quarts, 30 to 40 pints at $6 per pint is between $180 and $240 of fruit from one container in one season. And Stella on Gazella 5 is productive, meaning it starts bearing meaningful crops in its second or third year rather than making you wait a decade, like a standard cherry. Let me tell you something about the bird problem, because if you have ever grown any cherry tree and watched the birds strip it bare the morning before you plan to harvest, you understand this frustration at a visceral level. With a 30-foot tree, draping bird netting over the canopy is a multi-person, multi-ladder operation involving a lot of profanity and no guarantees that the netting will stay in place. With a 6-foot container tree, one person can drape commercial bird netting over the entire canopy in under 5 minutes, clip it at the base, and the birds will not get a single fruit. That is not a small advantage. That is the difference between getting your harvest and not getting your harvest, and it is one of the most concrete and practical benefits of container cherry growing that I can point to. Stella on Gisela 5 performs in USDA zones 5 through 8. Gazella 5 rootstock provides better cold hardiness than many other dwarfing cherry rootstocks, but the same root exposure vulnerability in containers applies here, as with the pear protect the root ball from hard freezes by moving the dormant container to an unheated but sheltered space during the coldest weeks of winter. Colt rootstock is slightly less dwarfing than Gisela 5, allowing the tree to grow a bit larger and root a bit more vigorously, which some growers prefer for container longevity. Either is an excellent choice. The main thing is that you source your tree with the rootstock explicitly labeled, because a Stella on a standard Mazard rootstock will eventually outgrow any container you put it in. When you are shopping, look for trees from specialty mail-order nurseries that sell bare root stock in late winter and early spring. Rain Tree Nursery, One Green World, and Dave Wilson Nursery are names I am comfortable recommending because they provide accurate rootstock information and true-to-name scion varieties. That transparency is exactly what you deserve when you are making a 10 to 15-year growing investment. Let me bring this home for you, because I want to make sure you leave today with a clear picture of what is actually possible. A 5-tree container orchard, say a Columnar apple pear, an improved Meyer lemon, a little Miss Figgy, and a Stella cherry requires approximately 250 to 300 square feet of outdoor space at most, and realistically can be arranged on a large patio in considerably less. The combined retail investment in the trees and containers is somewhere between $200 and $400, depending on how you source your stock. And the combined annual production value of those 5 trees, once they reach productive maturity, is in the range of $500 to $800 of fruit at organic retail prices every single year for a decade. That is not a hobby. That is a financial decision that pays better annual returns than most savings accounts, and it pays you in food your family actually eats. Every single week, this channel puts out content built entirely around one goal: helping real Americans grow real food in real homes with limited space and a real budget. No fluff, no products to sell you, no sponsored recommendations where I tell you something is great because somebody paid me to say it. This is me with 25 years of dirt under my fingernails, telling you exactly what works and exactly why, and being honest with you about what does not work, too, which is something most gardening content is too afraid to do. If you have not subscribed yet, do it now. It costs you nothing. It takes 2 seconds, and it means you will not miss the content coming up that goes deep on container soil mixes, on rootstock sourcing guides, and on the specific fertilizer timing protocols that the extension services recommend for container fruit trees in different climate zones. And here is what I need from you in the comments right now. Tell me your state. Tell me your USDA zone if you know it, and if you do not know it, drop your state and I will help you figure it out. And tell me which tree on this list you are putting in a container first. Are you going with the Columnar apples in Zone 4, the Meyer lemon in Zone 9, the little Miss Figgy on your apartment balcony in Zone 7? The Stella cherry because you are tired of watching birds eat $40 of fruit every June? I want to build a real picture of where this community is growing, food across America, because that map tells me what content to build next. Drop your state, drop your zone, and tell me which tree you are starting with. I read every single comment. Now, go find your container, go find your tree, and stop letting the grocery store charge you retail for fruit you could grow yourself. That is the end of the waste, and today is the day it stops.